All right, so when you think about humanitarian aid, what comes to mind? Probably food, right? Maybe shelter, medicine, but what about the money? The cash that has to move across the world to buy all that stuff? That's what we're talking about today. We're going to follow the journey of a single dollar trying to get to Syria, and you'll see why it's hitting this invisible financial wall.
So first, let's just get a sense of the scale here. We're talking about 13.5 million people in Syria who depend on humanitarian aid just to get by. To put that in perspective, that's more people than the entire population of Greece. It's a staggering number, right? Millions of people literally relying on outside help to survive.
And that leads us to the big question, really the whole point of this explainer. What happens when the money to help just can't get there? What if all those donations, all those good intentions get completely tangled up in red tape, stuck in some kind of financial limbo, never reaching the people who need it most?
Well, the answer, weirdly enough, comes down to this really technical-sounding term, bank de-risking. I know, it sounds super boring, but believe me, this concept has real life-or-death consequences, and we're going to break down exactly what it means.
Okay, so let's start by trying to understand this invisible financial wall. I mean, it just seems crazy, right? Why is it so hard to get money into a country where millions of people are in such desperate need?
Okay, so what is de-risking? Basically, you've got these massive global banks, and they are absolutely terrified of getting hit with billion-dollar fines for breaking anti-terror financing laws. So they look at an aid group, an NGO, working in a complex place like Syria, and they just think, you know what, this is too risky. It's not worth the headache. So instead of trying to figure out the details, it's just easier for them to say nope and shut down the account or block the payment. They're de-risking their own business.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The problem often isn't the NGO's local bank. It's these other banks in the middle called correspondent banks. You've probably never heard of them, but they're like the big highways of international finance. If you want to send money from, say, London to the Turkish border, it doesn't go direct. It has to hop through one of these giant intermediary banks. And they are the ones acting as the main choke point. They're the gatekeepers, and they are slamming the gate shut.
And listen to this. This quote from a compliance officer at a huge UK bank, it just says it all, doesn't it? We cannot afford the risks. We simply do not have the risk appetite for this sort of business. It's a cold, hard business calculation for them. The profit they'd make from an NGO's account is tiny, but the potential fines, they're massive. So for them, the math is simple. The door is just closed.
So, okay, the banks say no. What does that actually mean for the aid agencies on the ground? What does this bureaucratic nightmare actually look like for them?
Get a load of this number. At any given time, research shows that something like 35%, that's more than a third of all the money donated to help Syria, is just stuck. It's not lost, it's just sitting in banking limbo, frozen in the system, completely useless for the life-saving work it's supposed to be doing.
And this chart really drives the point home. Look at this. It used to take maybe 3 or 4 days to get a money transfer through for an aid project. Now, in this de-risking era, we're talking 3 to 5 months, sometimes even longer. Can you even imagine trying to run an emergency relief program when your money shows up 6 months late? It's impossible. It completely paralyzes everything.
And what's just got to be so infuriating for these aid groups is how random it all is. This quote from a finance director nails it. They'll send a payment and it goes through. The next month, they send the exact same payment to the exact same place, and boom, it's blocked. And the bank won't tell them why. There's no rhyme or reason to it, so they can't even figure out how to fix it.
All of this creates what experts call a chilling effect. Basically, the NGOs get so scared of having their money blocked that they start changing how they operate. It's wild. They'll literally change the name of their organization to take the word Syria out of it. They pull out of the areas that need the most help because they're seen as too risky. They even cancel programs before they've even begun, just because they're afraid they won't be able to get the money there. It's just preemptive surrender.
Okay, so enough about the banks. Let's talk about the people on the ground. What does all this mean for an actual Syrian family waiting for help?
Well, one of the biggest consequences is that it forces a move away from giving people cash. Now, cash aid is usually seen as the best way to help. It's efficient, it lets people buy exactly what they need, and it helps the local economy. But to a bank's computer system, big cash transfers look suspicious. So NGOs get pushed into giving in-kind aid instead, shipping in bags of rice or blankets. It costs more, it's less flexible, and honestly, it might not even be what people need.
And this one is just heartbreaking. It's from a Syrian aid worker, and they're explaining that when the money is late, people in the community don't know about correspondent banking. They just think the aid workers are stealing the money. It completely destroys trust, and as they say here, it can get really dangerous. Local armed groups start asking questions, wanting to know where the money is. It puts the staff in very real danger.
So this is it. This is the real human cost. Teachers' salaries don't get paid, and schools shut down. Projects to help small businesses just end. Winter supplies finally show up in the middle of summer. And maybe worst of all, aid workers go into a community and promise help, getting everyone's hopes up, only for the funding to get stuck. The trust is just shattered, and people are left with nothing.
So you've got this completely broken system. How do aid agencies even begin to work around it? I mean, what do you do when the normal, official ways just don't work?
I mean, think about it. If you can't use a bank, do you just give up? Do you tell the people in that town, sorry, our bank said no? Of course not. You find another way. But that other way, well, it comes with its own major risks. And that other way is often a system called hawala. It's this ancient, informal way of moving money that's all based on trust. It's kind of amazing, really. An NGO gives cash to a broker in, say, Turkey. That broker calls up his cousin inside Syria and says, give these guys X amount of money. And they do. No money actually crosses a border. In a lot of these places, it's literally the only way to get funds in. This creates a massive catch-22. On the one hand, the hawala system works. It's fast, it's effective, it gets money to where it needs to go. But on the other hand, it's totally informal and unregulated, which, you guessed it, makes banks and official donors even more nervous. Plus, now you have your local staff carrying around big bags of cash, which is a huge security risk. So by using the only system that works, they end up looking even riskier to the banks. It's a truly vicious cycle.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, the takeaway is pretty stark. The rules that were created with a good intention to stop money from getting to terrorists are now unintentionally choking the life out of legitimate humanitarian aid.
And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question. When you add it all up, the delays, the canceled projects, the shattered trust, is it possible that this effort to protect the global financial system has become a threat to human life that's as dangerous as the word itself? Has the system designed to stop bad guys ended up stopping the good guys too? It's a heavy question, and one we really need to think about.